You puny flesh creatures are wanting to learn how to create the robot voice for your new AI overlord? Well, take that data part and jack it on in as we show you various ways in Audacity how to do that. Welcome to the Digital Power Workshop. Let's log on in.
So before we get into the first way of making a voice sound robotic, we're going to play the default audio so you know what to compare it with. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. System diagnostics complete. I am alive. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on this where I highlight the whole thing. There's a couple different ways. I mean, you can sit here and double click on here. I'm just going to simply copy. Now I'm going to tell you right now, it's easier to work with this as mono track, so that'd be a different lesson how to create stuff mono. But you actually can kind of go in. I'll just do a quick thing. So like if you had a stereo track, you can split this stereo track into the monos, split stereo to mono there, and there's like another thing up here like what was it, mix or something? Yeah, mix stereo down to mono. So there's a couple different ways you can convert it. But anyway, when I add a mono track, I'm just going to click paste instead of clicking. That way it makes sure everything's already lined up. And I'm going to add another mono track, click Control V to complete to paste. I can't talk today. And so the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to click on either one. And you want to keep one of these tracks just your normal voice, and then we're going to edit the other two with the pitch generator or pitch. I'm going to come up here. I'm going to claim pitch. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set the default so you can kind of see where we're going. And it doesn't matter which one you do with which, because we're going to kind of do the opposite with both. But this one I'm going to do a -5. And you'll hear it's going to put me a slightly deeper voice. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. Okay, doesn't really sound too different than what I normally sound like, but I'm going to click apply. And so you can hear it now. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. Okay, we're almost kind of getting into that robotic voice. And so I'm going to click on here. And we're going to do the kind of the similar thing, but we're going to go the opposite direction. So we're going to change pitch. I'm going to get rid of that negative. You hear it. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. So you already can hear it as a higher pitch for me. Hit apply. And now we're going to play it. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. So that kind of really sounds almost robotic. Now you can give a little bit more of an effect if you move one of the channels that you change the pitch on to left and then one over to right. And you probably can tell this better if you have headphones on. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. System diagnostics complete. I am alive. And so that really sounds a bit more robotic. And so that's the first way you can make your voice sound robotic. Now for our second way of making a voice sound robotic, we're going to use the vocoder built in Audacity. So I'm just going to double click here because you're going to have it highlighted in order to use it. Makes sense anyway. Come down here, I think it's special, or is it? It's the distortion and modulation. Now this is we're going to kind of go through a couple of these. We'll show you a few different ways to do it. But vocoder is one of the more easier ones, and let's go ahead and listen and see what it sounds like. Initiating startup sequence. Oh, let me see. I'm on my basic presets. Can't remember. Nope, I wasn't on basic, so we'll do basics first. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. Now that almost reminds me of some of the voicing sound I've heard in old Voltron cartoons. But you can go through and you can change these presets to get a slightly different. Okay, that almost sounds very crystallization, I guess you would say. We'll switch this. Let's get over here. Now this right here, the vocal bands actually, I think uses the more I go to the right, the more CPU I believe it uses. At least it uses more of your computer power. It seems like it takes longer. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. System diagnostics complete. Now that kind of reminds me of something like more of the retro sci-fi sounding stuff. And you can go through and change these, and these will excuse me. Go through and change these, and it'll give a different
Initiating startup sequence.
So let's get the white noise a little bit more. See what that does.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagram.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you a little bit more staticky noise. Ratio. Let's see what we get here.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagram.
And so you can see it gives you a bunch of different audio sounds. And there goes the change. So now if I do
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
like I said, this kind of reminds me of some of those old sci-fi, especially the space audio transmissions. So that can be also a type of robot voice too. We're just working on all type of mechanical voices here. So the next method to help try to keep that robotic, mechanical, computerized voice is we're going to use the phaser effect. So highlight everything, come up here to effects, back down to distortion and modulation, and phaser. And now this is it at this default. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. That's kind of quiet. Let's bring up the output gain so you can hear it better. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. Okay, now with this one, it's not so much where you only can change one. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. That kind of gets in it, but you have to actually play around with these a bit to try to get that more robotic voice. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. That still don't sound. Let's bring this down and see what it sounds like. Initiating startup sequence. And bring up stage a little bit more. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic. So you can kind of hear how a little bit of it's changed around depending upon what you move and if it's really going to do anything. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. So that's kind of sound a bit more robotic. So here in the phaser you can do it, but you still have to play around with the different presets or whatever you want to call these little levers here to actually get you that nice robotic. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive. Okay, and so let's go on to the next one. A little bit of a bonus one that can kind of work for robot depending on what type of robot you're going for, not going to. Yeah, we're going to robots. But this one reminds me of a bit more of like a earlier version model where it hasn't learned to speak. Now it does remind me of some alien, so let's get on into this. This can double as either a early robot or alien. I want voice. Also, I want to come to my distortion. We're going to do the Wahwah. And let's make sure we're on I think we're on the factory presets. Yeah. And so what we're going to do is going to play it so you can hear. Let me turn up the output gain just a little bit so we can hear it clearly. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. Working diagnostic complete. So I can see this as very primitive robot talking, like one of the earlier models that you might want to have, or one that could have some messed up with his vocals, as well as it can be used for certain aliens trying to pronunciate our words. And right here, this is the wave frequency. This is where you can kind of control how clear those words can be said. Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. System diagnostic complete. Now that's almost kind of remind me of like somebody trying to speak over one of the old like 1960 sci-fi radios. When we come on down here, let's come down to 3 and see what it sounds like. Initiating sequence. Running level 1 diagnostics. Okay, that kind of reminds me of like one of the characters from the Men in Black movies. But yeah, you can use this on its own, maybe, but I can see it being combined on its own track with some other different effects and vocals. And so let's get on to our next, which we should be combining some of the different methods. Okay, this one we're going to kind of do a couple different things. One of them will be reusing the pitch that I covered earlier, but first things first, I'm going to copy and basically do the same thing I did earlier with the pitch and just make a couple of the tracks. Now, what I want to do now is let's take one of these and just zoom in and I'm going to grab it here at the top, and I'm going to move it over just a little bit. Let's see how that sounds.
Initiating startup sequence.
And it almost gives that little ting. I kind of covered something similar this in a past video. We're going to get that old speaker sound. But let's try again, beginning.
Initiating startup sequence.
You want to move it just a bit more.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1.
Okay, that's getting a little bit better. And we'll do the same thing for the, well, come on, get over. We'll do the same thing for the bottom one. And probably bring it over a little bit more.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
So you can almost right there, just that little bit of sliding the time shift. I don't think on the older ones they had like a tool up here that was called that, but here you don't have. Here you can just grab it, but it gives that little almost robotic sound already.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
Now we can also go back in and change the pitch like we did earlier. This time I'm going to change it up here just to be do something a little different. We're going to do the same thing. -5.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1
Boy, that really made me deep. And then in this one, we're going to do the same thing again, or something similar again. We're going to come up here and I'm going to make it just regular 5.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, got me high. I'm going to apply it. Now let's see what it sounds like all together.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
And then, of course, you can always do the dual channel feature to give it a little bit more effect.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
And so, yeah, you can do a couple right here, just playing around with mixing the effects. Now, I'm going to bring these back to the center right quick, and we're just going to mute this. And we'll see what it sounds like without the original voice.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic.
Now that just really sounds more like just two voices talking, so you kind of do need this one here.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
Yeah, just to me, like if you have all three, it seems to work a little better. And so this can be a type of a robotic voice you can use. So our next method we're going to use to try to create that robot voice, we're going to combine 3 of the effects: the bass, the pitch, and the phaser. So we're going to go ahead and highlight everything we want to change. I'm going to come down here to EQ and filters, go to bass and treble. Now let me go ahead and hit the default so you can hear what it sounds like. So this is the default.
Initiating startup sequence.
Sounds like my normal voice. Now if I change the bass some, so let's see what the bass sounds like.
Initiating startup sequence. Running.
Okay, that's making me sound a little bit deeper. We're going to come over just a little bit more.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, that sounds kind of good. I'm going to bring down the output just a little bit because I think I might be peaking.
Initiating startup sequence.
And I can bring it up a little bit more. Come on.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1
Okay, I'm not quite peaking there. I'm going to come down just a little bit just to make sure.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, that seems to be a little bit better. Hit apply. So the next thing now we're going to do is we're going to actually go back to our distortion and no, not distortion. We're going to do delay and no, not delay. Okay, well, I've already forgotten there's my pitch. I forgot where the pitch was. Go back to our factory default, and we're just going to move the sliding scale. Not quite that much, but just enough to see if we can make a difference.
Initiating startup sequence.
Can't tell much difference. We'll come on down some more.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1.
Okay, that seems to be a little bit better. Go on the pace. And now lastly, we're going to come on in to the phaser down here in distort motion. Go back. I think we're just going to keep what we previously used. Let's see what it sounds like first.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic.
So that does sound a little bit better. Let's move this over just a tad to see what we get.
Initiating startup sequence.
Let's move the depth to see what we get.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level.
And I'm going to move the output gain up just a little bit because it sounds kind of quiet.
Initiating startup sequence.
Oop, now I'm peaking there.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
So that sounds a little bit better. So we're going to hit apply and let's see.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
So that kind of gives you almost a bit more, I guess you could say darker, rougher, sinister voice. Now if we come in probably, let's just do it for the sake of it. I hadn't really planned on it. Let's just add vocoder and see what it sounds like.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1.
That's kind of comical to a degree. And you can probably go in and you can play around, mix and match these a bit more to see what you come up with. So I believe this is number 7 of our different ways of creating robotic voices. So normal, highlight everything we want to change. And let's see, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to change the pitch. Go back to the factory settings, and I'm going to bring you down a good bit. Let's see what we get. We come down here some.
Initiating startup sequence.
A little too deep.
Initiating startup sequence.
Yeah, maybe not quite that deep either.
Initiating startup sequence.
I need a bit deeper than that.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, that seems a bit better. Hit apply. And then the next thing I'm going to do is going to come up here to effect, and we're going to do reverb. Sorry, not reverb, but echo. So we're going to start with the normal. Let's see. I think that's right. Let's just go to the default so we can hear what it sounds like.
Initiating startup sequence.
So that's too much of a delay. So we're going to come down here, and I'm just going to show you some of this stuff.
Initiating startup sequence.
Still too much, so I'm going to add a 0 there.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, that's a little bit better. So hit apply, and let's see what the whole thing is now.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
Now that kind of reminds me of what you might hear as a robotic AI spaceship voice. This is what it's making me think of. It's almost getting that little hall effect of it speaking. But that is another type of robot voice you can use. And so number 8 on our making robot voice, we're going to use pitch again. This time I'm going to copy everything, and I'm going to do my do track. I mean, you don't, and you can do this quite a couple times. As you can see, I've used different ways or worked on a single track. But here we're going to go back to our pitch, and I think I'm going to stick with our same thing we had last time.
Initiating startup sequence.
So I'm going to stick with that. Just go ahead and apply. Now I'm going to come up here to effect, and I'm going back to distort. Let's talk about delay and reverb. I'm going to use the reverb thing. Now, I don't want to see what we got. So you can kind of do different ones. So like I can do a church hall. Let's see what it sounds like. Okay, that's interesting. Let's try that without with the two together.
Initiating startup sequence.
Okay, no, they ain't working that way. Let's see. Distortion. Go back to the reverb. We'll go back. So you can probably play around with some of the different settings. Trying to see. I hadn't really played around with all of these, but go back to the default and we'll see what it sounds like.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic.
Okay, that really adds a nice little effect. Let's just hit apply and see what it sounds like together.
Initiating startup sequence. Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
So just using the default reverb along with just the normal audio track gives a nice robotic sound.
Initiating startup sequence.
Running level 1 diagnostic. System diagnostic complete. I am alive.
And so there you go. You kind of got another robot voice to add to your collection. And that is some ways you can create a robot, computer, machine-like voice in Audacity. And if you like my content, you can go to any of these websites right here to support me in various ways. Some of the links are in the description, as well as you can like, subscribe, and share this video with anyone you think might find it interesting. And if you want to start cleaning up audio for your different videos and other projects, then I recommend you start with my video here on how to use noise gate in Audacity for clean audio. Until next time, have a nice day.